It's Jayz here with you again. This is another one of our donor conversation series. And today is, kind of a really special one for me. And let me just tee it up. And again, I'm going to ask everybody who's not Eric, Danielle, and Jim to go on mute just to make sure we eliminate extraneous noise. Megan, good to see you. I'm just going to tee it up before I turn it over to Eric, because we're going to have a conversation today. It's going to be kind of a chronological order conversation, taking us back in history a little bit and then bringing us up to date through Jim and then finishing up with Danielle. And then we're going to have plenty of time for questions from those that are zoomed in. You can ask the questions in the chat if you want. It's sometimes easier that way because we've got a pretty good crowd today. We're up to 40 already. We're expecting more. But let me just go back to August 23rd of 2006 for a minute, which was the first day of school at ePrep, which was the school I had something to do with founding. And I remember wanting to go into this business for a single reason, and that was, how could we impact poverty in Cleveland, the highest poverty city in the country, especially for kids, and thought that the way to do that was through education. And obviously we can't fix poverty by just getting kids an 8th grade education, although that's pretty important, but it goes beyond that. And so my vision from day one was, how do we help our scholars not only successfully navigate ePrep, but navigate high school, college, and job, career, and come back and kind of change the whole face of Cleveland, which I think is still possible. It may not happen in the first 10, 15 years, but it might happen in 20 or 30 years. And now we're already 15 into it. So hopefully in my lifetime, we'll see a real change in the curve. So Eric, I want to start with you because, the vision back in 2006 was to kind of do this. But it wasn't until 2017 that it all of a sudden became like front and center. So why don't you take us back about 4 years ago and tell us a little about you and your background in terms of this work, in terms of like your involvement with Breakthrough and me, and then kind of tell us what happened 4 years ago, and then bring us up to speed before Jim got here.
Sure, happy to. As far as my background, not that important, but I'm not an educator by any means. I'm from the business world, and I go back. Like most things in life, things happen because of relationships, and I happen to know John now for almost 40 years, having worked for him right out of college, and. In any case, worked a couple times with John and have had a deep respect for what you've created, John, here in Cleveland with eCity and then ePrep and then Breakthrough. So I've been involved on the periphery as a donor and a volunteer and a mentor and eventually a board member of one of the schools, and wanted to increase my involvement, even though I didn't have an education background. But in any case, going back to this dinner that John and I had, we were just catching up basically down in the flats. And I recall as we were catching up, John was especially proud of the fact that, because this was 2017, that 8 years after we graduated our first cohort of 8th grade graduates in 2009, he was aware that a couple folks had graduated from college. And so that was something he was especially proud of. I'm sure maybe you've seen some videos of John saying, hey, welcome to Breakthrough, you're going to college, right? So in any case, so we're celebrating that. And I asked John how many went to college, and he didn't know. And I asked how many were in that original graduating class, and he didn't know. And given what I know the vision is of Breakthrough, that bothered me quite a bit. And I challenged him on it. And my concern was, if we believe that a great K-8 education is having an impact, but if we lose touch with our scholars after 8th grade, how do we know there's a correlation, if any? I mean, are we actually having an impact on these scholars' lives or in Cleveland? And as a small donor, I was still interested in the ROI, if you will, on my investment in Breakthrough, whether it's financial or just through time. And as we talked about it, Jayz, and I challenged him on the issue, it ended, and this is a classic Jay-Z, right? He said, I don't know, what are we going to do about it? And so by the end of that dinner, I found myself volunteering or being voluntold or to take a 1 month effort and take one high school and see if it was even possible to find these students after 8 years had passed, which when you consider the fact that we don't know their email addresses in 8th grade, we don't know their cell phone numbers, if they even have one, their physical addresses likely changed, and we really didn't have any idea, for the most part, which high schools they went to at that point in time for those cohorts. It was really a challenge, and I thought this will be real interesting. So I embarked on my 1 month effort, which turned into a 5 month effort, and 6 different schools, not one, and then a 50-page report that I provided to John and Alan Roskam. And I became quite passionate during that period of time. And one of my learnings and discoveries during that time was that it's not so much about the statistics. That's important and it's critical, but the real opportunity was that Breakthrough has probably the best network of supporters here in Cleveland of any other organization. We seem to know everybody and enjoy quite a bit of support. So if we're able to contact these alumni, if we're able to communicate with those alumni, why can't we leverage our network to continue to support them in the 3 major phases after their 8th grade, high school, college, and career? So anyway, so at that point, I had already left my corporate job and decided this is how I wanted to cap off my career anyway, to try to give back a little bit in my own way. So I embarked on trying to lay the foundation for what is now known as the Alumni Success Program. For those of you who are interested in metrics, data is at the very core of this. We have 2,149 alumni. They've gone to 147 different high schools, believe it or not. And they've gone to 127 different colleges. So with that amount of alumni, it is a tremendous data gathering and updating process. But in the methodology of trying to lay the foundation, also needed to have processes in place, needed technology, needed a database. So we acquired Salesforce, and we needed to have a portal.
I'm on a Zoom. I'll call you back.
Needed a portal in order to be able to aggregate any programs and services that we were able to create for these alum. Then we had to create the programs and services, right? And then at the very top would be sustainability. So what I thought would be a 1 or 2 year effort turned into so far 4 years, 4.5 and counting. And the foundation had been laid, but it was still the efforts of one individual, full-time, right? With the help of a lot of part-time help. And I was nearing the end of my rope. And in the summer of last year, had a lot of conversations with Alan and with John and trying to figure out how do we get their resource challenged environment. And anyway, right after a particularly difficult conversation about that, I looked out the window and the skies, the rain stopped falling, the clouds parted, the sun shone through, and an angelic figure just kind of appeared. And with that, I'll turn it over to either John or to Mr. Bennett there.
Well, I think we'll turn it over to Jim for sure, Eric. But listen, those of the folks listening only heard just a small part of your story in the last 10 minutes, but it's a huge story, and we owe you a debt of gratitude. And Jim, I'll let you pick it up from there, because I think timing is everything. And those of you who are board members or know me know that I do believe God works in mysterious ways, and people come into my life at the right time, at the right place, and the right people come in. And I must say that Eric is one of them, and Jim Bennett is another, and soon you'll find out why Danielle is a third. But Jim, why don't you take it from our phone call?
Well, thank you, Jayz. And thank you, Eric. Undeserved, but thank you very much. That phone call was Thanksgiving weekend 1 year ago. And I was looking for something in the community that I could work at and would be a new full-time job for me. And I wanted something that had the impact on the community that Breakthrough has, and everything that all of you have built over the 10 years that there has been a Breakthrough, and the difference it was making in people's lives. I wasn't thinking of Breakthrough, but I was starting my usual calling around and asking people what they thought I might get involved in. Jayz was my first call, and he was himself. And he said, well, I'm flattered that you're calling me because you regard Breakthrough highly. I don't know about anything else that's going on in Cleveland. But hey, we are just embarking on something new that can really make a major difference. And that is an alumni success program. And he briefed me a bit on that and said, you ought to talk to this guy, Eric Baumgartner, who's been spending a lot of time laying the foundation of this and making it possible for us to now go do something very special. I saw Eric, I think the next day. We spent 2 or 3 hours, and I was committed by the end of those 2 or 3 hours to get involved and to work with you, all of you, to see what we could do. And I'll say we because it means my whole family, really consider it a privilege. We have had an interest in what goes on in the neighborhoods of Cleveland and in education for quite some time. Looking back at my involvement, it's been about 25 years with various projects at McKinsey. I was on the Cleveland Foundation and had the education beat for 10 years as a director and grant maker, and spent 2.5 years as Ron Berkman's chief of staff at Cleveland State. So became more and more committed to the kinds of young people who we have as our scholars. My brother Dick, who was on our team, may be on the call, has spent years advising inner city entrepreneurs. My brother Steve has helped a number of individual people with their struggles to be more successful. My son Andrew, whom some of you heard a few moments ago, has been a 2-year mentor at college now. My daughter Kate is with an organization called Frontline, which provides trauma support in the inner city when there's been violence in households. So it seemed like a wonderful fit. And again, we have considered it all the way along as a family as something we're privileged to be involved in. And again, thank all of you for that wonderful opportunity to build on what had been put in place, particularly by Eric and the folks who supported him. I will quickly say that if I had continued talking with Jayz and he said, you got to go out and spend 3 years building a Salesforce database, you have to go to all these schools to do the stuff that Eric did, I would have said, well, I may not live that long. And quite apart from that, I wouldn't be very good at that. So no thanks. Sounds great, but I wouldn't want to be involved. So I'm here because of Breakthrough and what it's accomplished, and particularly because of Eric. Just a few words then on what happened next. And as those of you I know are aware, I spent 30 years as a management consultant at McKinsey and Company, so I do projects. So I said to Jayz and Eric and Alan, let's do an in-depth study and let's really find out not whether we're going to do this, but what it would look like and what the program might be if we actually had one and turned on the switch. The team members were the family members I mentioned earlier, and Eric. And so we had it as an independent study. I guess the Bennett Group, me as a consulting firm, was the one who undertook the study. Of course, not for compensation, but for the love of doing it. And there were some very important principles that I'll mention to you briefly that guided the work throughout. First of all, that what Eric challenged John on, and that was really being committed as a matter of mission, not to K through 8 education just, but on through to success in life was really important. And the words we're now using for that as it's come to fruition is that each scholar or each breakthrough alumnus finds fulfillment, financial security, and the ability to live choice-filled lives. So I became it didn't take much to, in interacting with you, to be convinced of that this was a very noble mission that could really make a difference. Second principle was we wanted to be the best in the country. So we went around, we interviewed some 70 people, many of them with the leading charter schools, as well as all the education leaders in Cleveland, that we wanted this to be the best there could be by way of a program. The third was that it was something of scale. There were some people who said, look, why don't you start with the 7th graders and build slowly? Again, my reaction was, I don't think I'll live that long to have the impact we would want to. So we set out to serve or to involve in this the 7th and 8th graders, our first cohort, then all the high school kids, of whom there are 1,000, the college kids, and those working about another 1,000. If you add all those people up, that's 3,000 people, and the alumni group is growing at about 200 a year, or maybe a little less. So we're going to be, or this project is going to be impacting the lives of 5,000 people, but starting out of the gate at 3,000 people. So something of scale rather than little drips and drabs. So it's pretty ambitious. And the final principle was, if we're going to do this and we're going to push this forward, all of us collectively, this has to be a high performance effort with a high performing team. So the team that we decided during the project we needed was about at least 8 people full time, and we're pretty close to staffing up in that. We've got all but one. Eric, Danielle, and I are kind of full-time-ish, the equivalent of 2 people full-time as a collaborative leadership group. So I got my wish of finding my next full-time job. And we have set out very ambitious objectives. For example, in a period of not so long, to double the number of 8th graders who now go on to graduate from college, to double that, to get it up to among the best achievements in the country, and to do that before we hit 2030. And we've also set an aspiration that we're determined to meet, is that every person who goes on to high school, every alumnus who goes to high school will go on to some sort of post-secondary education, whether that be college. And we think the 55% or so of our kids who now go to college maybe isn't far off. But what about all the others? And we are committed to make sure they have an alternative pathway, career path that will enable them to meet that mission. So those were the things that really guided the effort. And we're really excited about where we stand. Another person coming into Jayz's life was Danielle, with her 10 years at the gold standard kipp at a national level. And Jayz, I think I've talked for more than long enough. So now over to Danielle. And I think you may have wanted people to stick things in the chat if they had questions. And did you? Or
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll have Danielle kind of talk about her involvement and where we are and where we're going. But feel free, those of you on the call, to start putting questions in the chat. They may get answered before long, but you can wait or put them in the chat. And Jim, before we move to Danielle, though, this, in order to hire 8 full-time people and continue to be sustainable for years, requires money. And one thing that I think you might have left out is that we need to raise a lot of money to do this. We started thinking about raising 5 million. That got changed, but I think it's, Jim, I'm gonna, because you're too humble, but Jim put in the first $2 million personally toward our goal of $8 million, $10 million. So out of the gate, we had an injection of a $2 million commitment. And I think, Jim, you're kind of in charge of the fundraising now, but I think we're up close to or over 4 million out of the 10.
Yeah, we're over 4. And those of you who know Jayz can see that I've been Jayz'd on this one. I always try to stay away from that topic. He made me say what it was at the golf outing, and I kind of choked down a drink. And then, and some very nice people responded after that. So he was right. And the only other thing I'll add is after years of failure in startup companies, kind of on the side, I got lucky. And so one of my intentions, going back to my first call with Jayz, was to invest in whatever it is that I was doing. So thank you for that. And it's something I'm delighted to have been lucky enough to be able to do.
So Danielle, to tee it up to you. So we had Eric laid the groundwork and did a lot of the foundation building, putting up some of the girders and building the basement. And then we had Jim come in and say, okay, I can, we can figure out how to get the mortgage on this thing and start paying for it. But we needed a seasoned leader. Eric asked me to find another person to lead it. He wanted to stick around and do what he's best at, and which he'd be a great leader and is a great leader as well. And of course, Jim has a certain role. But Danielle, we came to you, and why don't you take it from there? And thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jayz. Well, hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here. So I had a relationship, with an existing relationship with BPS, serving on the board on the school side. So I was fairly familiar with both organizations, and then also, of course, the work that Eric had started. And as Jim, I think, mentioned, I was working at KIPP, leading research and evaluation efforts for that network, which is 260 schools across 20 states. So have done some thinking around systems and similar work on alumni over there. And as I was plotting my transition from KIPP, Eric and I had a catch up on how things had sort of evolved on the alumni front. And then one thing led to another. And as you can see, they're both, not that they are not tactical and practical people, but they're also dreamers and visionaries. And so I think they needed someone to come in and sort of really think about, okay, how do we execute on this amazing strategy at a really tactical way. And so we make a really good trio together. So that's been super fun. I was thrilled to be able to join this work as it was getting off the ground and going from really the foundation building Eric had laid and the strategy development Jim and his group had done, to really thinking about growth and implementation and what that looks like. The ability personally to get to actually figure out how to work in Cleveland and focus my impact on Cleveland students was really way too good to pass up. So since coming on board in June, I've been focused on building the team and getting really crisp on our first year implementation plan. Like, so what are we actually doing? What are these people in these roles like doing day to day to drive towards our vision? I thought I might actually share the vision. So as we have sort of, a lot of you have probably seen the strategy document and understand we're working across 4 different what we're calling cohorts. So the kids that are currently in the K-8 buildings, thinking about things like what more do we need to do around career prep early on, the kids that are in high school, 9 through 12, our post-secondary scholars, and then ultimately the labor market. But as I was thinking about that, it was helpful for me to like really turn it into a vision statement to guide the work. So our vision is for all breakthrough alumni to find fulfillment, financial freedom, and the ability to lead choice-filled lives, working alongside students, families, their chosen high school and post-secondary institutions, and local organizations. The Alumni Success Program will offer continued engagement beyond 8th grade in order to support BPS alumni in their journey to achieve their dreams. So I'm going to come back to talk about some important elements of that vision statement in a minute, but having that really helped to focus on who were we looking for to fill these roles. And so as Jim previewed, we already have since June a functional team of 8, including Jim and Eric. We have a couple more positions we're hoping to fill this year, but it's super exciting to have a full team developed. We just came out of our first full team 2-day retreat together, which was just awesome. And we really prioritize getting people in seats to oversee data and contact work, high school partnerships, post-secondary education, and what we're calling alumni support, which is essentially providing that human touch point and sort of more direct access to barrier reduction and support around that. In addition, we're working on all these critical infrastructure elements, which we've called in some documents like the cross-cutting capabilities. So things like having a data system in place, having an alumni portal, which will enable us to stay in contact with our alumni in more ways and give them access to things like our partner employers, and also working on our marketing, branding, and social media efforts so that we can really start to get out there both to alum, but also to the broader community about what we're doing. So as we built the team, it would be negligent to not mention how diverse the team is. So I'm really thrilled that we're sort of diverse from a gender perspective, from a race perspective, but also, this is so interesting to me, I keep talking about it, we span 5 generations, we figured out. And that is just like so interesting and dynamic and cool and leading us to just be better and better together, I think, because we come from all these different vantage points and life experiences. And so that's just been truly awesome, a little unexpected and like really cool outcome of this early work. So I'll tell you a little bit about how our vision statement has helped focus on our year 1 work and give you a little bit of color about what that looks like. And then I'll open it up for some questions. So the important element I want to call out from the vision statement that will help contextualize where we're spending time this year is that we are really sort of setting ourselves up to be a safety net. We're not intending to replicate the amazing services and programs that the many excellent institutions locally already offer. We're not going to be a high school, we're not going to be a college, we're not going to be college now, right? Those institutions already exist and do amazing things for our students. But what we're trying to figure out is, even with all of those amazing institutions, we have students that are sort of like what I've been saying, like leaking out of the pipeline. And so we need to figure out why they're leaking out of the pipeline, when they're leaking out of the pipeline, and what we can do to help sort of stop that and get them back on their path to their dreams. So in order to do that, we really need to have 3 things, like an analysis of what's happening, really strong partnerships, and then connections. And so that is largely where we're focused on this year. So I'll say a little bit about each of those areas. So in the analysis area, many of our deliverables for this year include developing a solid understanding of the landscape, both at the system institution level. So what high schools are there? How are we defining high quality? Which voc tech programs should our students be going to, right? Like which ones offer bang for your buck? And also at the alumni level, like who is succeeding where and why and when? What is happening? What are those interesting like transition points? So some color that I think will help understand like what our value add is. like an early finding from our work is that there are transition moments for students that don't necessarily align with like what you might think of as a natural transition point. So obviously 8th to 9th grade for our students is a huge moment in time. We want to make sure all of our kids land in high quality high schools in 9th grade, develop a sense of social and academic belonging, and find a trusted adult in that building, participate in extracurriculars, right? Like there's some things we want to see happen, like 9th grade success. That's a very natural, obvious sort of place to focus. What was less obvious, but has come out of some of our early discovery work, is that there are other transition moments for individual kids. So a transition for an individual kid is when they might choose, or their family might choose for some reason, to leave the high school that they were placed in or enrolled in upon exit from BPS, right? So suddenly you have a senior who suddenly leaves the high school they've been at for 3 years, and that high school kind of not stops caring about them, but doesn't have capacity to follow them through. What happens to that student? Maybe they're fine, maybe they're not, maybe they need some help getting to a place like Promise Academy where they could finish their high school degree real quick and then get to work, right? So we can fill that gap for those individual students. Another finding is that this is an early hypothesis I have, and it may not pan out to be true, but we have a lot of programs coming at us right now that are interested in partnering that are really for kids that have 3.0s or higher, 3.5s or higher, tons of will help you get into college and mentor and provide you a mentor and scholarships. And so I have a hypothesis that there may be a gap to fill for our students who are less strong academically by a certain point in their high school career. So that is the kind of thing that we are trying to analyze this year and in order to inform future programmatic work. The second thing we're focused on is these partnerships, right? So again, we're not going to be a social service agency. We're not going to be a school. So we really need to rely on having strong partnerships with all of these other institutions so that we can help identify where our kids are not accessing those institutions or the services they offer or the counselors they offer at the right moment in time. And we can work together. So we're doing a ton of this work. Eric has already done like tons of work around partnerships, both at the high school level, working with our school side team and our high school placement officers. So there's already like great groundwork for high school partnerships. He's been working really hard on employer partnerships. Our new post-secondary director, Jillian, is working really hard on trying to form great relationships at places like CSU and Kent State and Tri-C. And so, but what we think about when we talk about partnerships is trying to like make that even, like put even more meat to that. Like, what does it mean to be mutually beneficial partnerships so that we can collectively support our students on their journey? And so one example there is that we're exploring with a high school where we send a ton of kids, whether we could actually share some counseling staff. Would that make sense and alleviate some stress on that school and add extra support to our students and allow us more direct contact as we support them? So just an example of what a partnership might look like. And finally, it's essential that we're in contact with our alumni in more robust and meaningful ways. So we've always been in touch with a set of them, largely have been in touch with the high flyers, right? But we want all of our alumni to feel comfortable contacting us, know that they have a lifelong relationship with Breakthrough, and that we're another resource for them on their journey. So a couple highlights here. We formed an Alumni Leadership Council, which is a group of just stellar alumni that represent different stages and pathways towards their career. They're in college or career right now. Some of them went college track, some of them did not. And they're advising us and running their own projects aligned to our strategy. And it's super cool. And at some point, I hope we have them on one of these so they can tell you all about their work. We're also actively reaching out to try and contact all of our alumni. We're using board members and volunteers to write postcards, and then we're personally emailing all of our alumni in college right now, going school by school. This has already resulted in us hearing about students who are needing extra support. So one anecdote there is just, we got in touch with a student at CSU and missing calculator was essentially about to derail a whole set of things in her life. And so we were able to help her navigate the systems at CSU to gain a calculator. It led to some other conversations where we understood there was some food insecurity, that she didn't really understand her financial aid situation. And so we were able to help her problem solve. We did not have to do anything to come up with new programs or resources. We just had to help her be in touch and be a supportive adult that could follow up and help her navigate the system. And so we assume and plan to do a lot of that kind of work, which will also help us understand where we might need more systematic approaches to solving some of these problems for students and with students. So all of this work in year one is hopefully going to help us develop really stronger, even better year two plans. This is just a taste. There's so many other things going on, including the launch of our alumni portal. But I'm happy to answer any questions, or the group can answer questions about what we're up to.
Danielle, thanks so much. One question popped in right away. Are there other examples of this going on in the country? And are there other success groups that we could collaborate with or learn from or whatever?
Yes, for sure. So KIPP is a leading place that's done amazing work on what they had been calling KIPP. It was originally KIPP to college, and it was KIPP through college. Now it's actually called KIPP Forward because it's inclusive of more than college. And so they're definitely a place we look to for examples and are in touch with about how to do this work. The thing that's super interesting about Breakthrough, right, is that on paper, our graduates leave us in 8th grade, which is a little different than most, but not all KIPP regions, right? Where you have more access in college to do some of that college counseling or post-secondary counseling. And so part of our struggle, but also part of where we have an opportunity to be real leaders in the field, is trying to figure out what it looks like really to create an alumni network for kids that were in elementary and middle school together. But there are many, many organizations doing great success work. And as Jim mentioned, our job is not to reinvent the wheel, but to learn from the best and apply it to our kids in Cleveland.
Yeah, just to add 30 seconds onto that, during the course of the interviews for the project, we had probably 7 or 8 of the best examples in the country, as Eric and Andrew can attest to. From that, we extracted 8 lessons that comes from national experience of excellence, most of which we found some way to incorporate. So I guess I'd like to think that from the beginning, the idea or the commitment was to do just what the question asker wanted us to do, to be sure we weren't sitting here in Cleveland figuring this out, but drawing on the very best in the country. And I think we've done that. Feel pretty comfortable that we have and are continuing to do that.
Great, Jim, thanks. And Sanjay, we'll get to your question in a second. And Monica, you have your hand raised. Go ahead and go off mute and you can ask.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, just a comment. This is like the most exciting opportunity ever for our students. And I just love the detail, the vision, and what everyone is doing. It makes me think about my daughter and a CMSD student. They graduated from Martin Luther King the same year my daughter graduated from Laurel. And when they went to college, they both went to Howard. My daughter had all the opportunity in the world from her parents and support. And then Howard University added to positioning her. The young lady that graduated from Martin Luther King, CMSD, she did not have the background that my daughter had in terms of preparation for college, but she was in our TRIO program at Tri-C. And so she was able to get the wraparound services that we were able to offer her as an alum from CMSD. And she was also successful because of what you're talking about everything that you're talking about, putting into place. That is why Danita was successful as a CMSD graduate. So this works. This is proof in the pudding that this opportunity is spot on, and I so appreciate it.
Monica, that's terrific. Thanks for the kind comments. Thanks. Hey, Sanjay asked a question. I don't know if Danielle or Eric or Jim, anyone can handle, but it's about targets, like, graduation rates from college target, high school degree targets. Who wants to comment on that real quick?
This is a great question. I love it. Bring me the data questions. So I have a nerdy dashboard it has a lot of TBDs in it, but I'm happy to go deep with anyone who wants to have a one-off or do some advising on this. The short answer is we have some targets. So for instance, we hope 100% of BPS 8th grade graduates graduate from high school, and our goal is graduate from high school with clear post-secondary plans, right? What exactly that looks like and how we're going to do that, a little bit less clear. That's part of the work of this year, figuring it out. But so that feels very clear. We obviously want to increase the percent of students that are not just going to college, but that are persisting in college. We also want to make sure that is the right decision, both that the students, that is their dream, that is aligned with their career plans, and that students understand things like the financial risks associated with that, right? And rewards. And so that is part of the work we're doing. So we had set some very ambitious targets. We got pushed to sort of think about things like, can you double, can you triple, can you hit 50% BAs in the next 5 years? And like mathematically, that's not even possible, right? So we do have a proposal out with a really awesome data guy who's going to help us with some predictive analytics and really make sure that as we set targets, we're setting them in a way that is both aspirational and reasonable, and that we're really thinking about economic success and mobility and what we know about the ROI. Jim's done a lot of work on sort of thinking about our ROI. But so some of those numbers I think we're not ready to share, but we're definitely working on them and they're under development.
Great. And time has gone so quickly. I can't believe we're almost up to 45 minutes or so. But hey, I want to put Alan Roskam on the spot for a minute. And Alan, you just retired as CEO of Breakthrough. Are there any comments you would like to make regarding the future of this alumni success and kind of your hopes and dreams for what happens as the outgoing CEO? If you're still there.
I'm here. You are putting me on the spot.
Yes, you get used to it. Get used to it.
I couldn't be more enthusiastic about this initiative, how far it's come, how quickly it's come. Danielle, I learned things from your presentation I wasn't even aware of. It. The momentum is just building, and the opportunity to truly impact so many scholars, the ultimate life outcomes is just huge. I have to admit, this is something John and Eric have been talking about for years. I had been a skeptic. And I'm a true believer now. This initiative will make a huge difference in our scholars' lives and ultimately in our community. So I couldn't be more enthusiastic.
Great. Well, after 10 years, you're used to being put on the spot. So I appreciate you just jumping right in there, Alan. Any last minute comments from anybody out there? We'd like to start on time and end on time, and we have about a minute to go, but I'm happy if anybody wants to come off mute and make a comment. Now's your chance. I'll give you 5 seconds. Okay, in that case, I will close it out by saying just huge thank you for the 48 or so people that have gotten on this call to listen to what we're trying to do. Huge thanks to Danielle, Eric, Jim for your leadership in this, and Danielle, your hiring of the team has been just outstanding, and the team is doing a great job. I think it's safe to say we'd love to hire some of our alums to join our team at some point, and that's definitely a goal of everybody's, and I think it would be awesome. And to those of you on the call, I would say if you want to dig into this a little bit more or have questions, feel free to email me, and I'll forward the email on to Jim or Danielle or Eric as the right person to respond, because I know all three of them would, this isn't the forum for a lot of one-on-one conversations about how you could help, but there's a lot of ways that you guys can help. And it takes more than just 8 people in this department. There are some groups doing this, Danielle, I think you've said with 15, 20 people in the department and still can't keep up with it. So, and Linda Miller's asking for a copy of the vision statement. Danielle, if you send me a copy of that, I'll shoot it on to Linda. And so with that, it's 1:16, not bad. So Eric, Jim, Danielle, everybody, thanks for joining us. And what we're gonna do is, this is being recorded. we will turn it into a presentable recording and put it out on YouTube. And anybody on the call who found it worthwhile and maybe would like to share it with somebody else, as soon as we get a link, Tim Mann has kept track of who's on this call, and he will send the link to this recording out to all of you and to those who signed up and couldn't make it. And then you guys can forward it on to anybody else if you want to. All right. So with that, I'll say it's Jayz checking out from downtown, and thanks for everybody for being here. Take care, everybody.